Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Zahira Bam Ismail. We're sharing this platform today to discuss something exceptionally close to many of our hearts, the state of women and children in Gaza. This is a global cross-collaboration between us here in South Africa at the Hilaal TV studios, Lina Hadid and Dima Asfour, who I will introduce you to in a little while. These phenomenal women have been doing amazing work behind the scenes, and I think this is what it comes back to. With the current narrative that has been shown all over social media, alhamdulillah, there's been an increased awareness to what is happening. But please note, this is not by any means a new situation or a new thing that has just started. This is something that has been going on for over 75 years. And as we progress, as we watch this, as we watch the words that are coming out, with no doubt, this will become the legal litmus test for humanity in years to come. I've often said to people, I don't want to be someone who turns around and tells my children, I'm so sorry, or I didn't do anything, or I didn't know where I stood. We need to be able to change our words into action, to be able to say we stood on the right side of humanity, to stood on the right side of justice, that we did every single thing we could to be able to make effective changes. When we look at the statistics that are coming out, and this is from organizations like UNICEF, from the UN, we know that women make up at least approximately 49% of the population. Children under 18 make up 47%. By that mere statistic, it means men make up less than 10% of the population in Gaza. Let that sit with you just for a little while as we start talking about why this topic of women and children in Gaza are so important. We don't have to talk at length about research that has come out from McKinsey, what the Harvard statistics have put out in terms of what the strength of a woman is. Every single one of you watching understands the value of women in our homes, understands the value of women in our communities, understands the value and the strength that women provide to people around them, how women build communities, how women put families together, how women are the strength of communities. And when we watch indiscriminate bombing of women and children across Gaza, you need to understand what the purpose of this genocide is, the generations that are being wiped out. But understand that if you are watching this from the comfort of your home, there's something inside you that is stirring. There's something inside you that wants to be the voice for those women and those children. Currently, from Islamic Relief, we've received statistics that over 13,000 people have been killed, of which 5,600 are children and 3,500 are women. Of the 6,000 that are missing, 2,800 of those are children. These are not just numbers, they're not just statistics, and we have to be so careful to not dehumanize the people of Palestine, the people of Gaza. We need to understand that behind every number is a name, is a person, is a face, is a dream. We watch our children and you watch one child getting hurt and it hurts every part of you. Here we're watching generations of people. We're watching decades long of oppression, of brutal occupation. And this is not something, like I'm saying, that gives us the liberty in our privileged positions to be able to say it's just another number. These are not numbers. They are names, they belong to families, and they have dreams just like me and you. We hear the words of human rights, of democracy, of civilization, of teaching civilization, of teaching these concepts. If these are not innate concepts within each of us, why on earth do we need charters that govern basic human rights? We have organizations that have been put up, structures that have been put up internationally to govern how people should be treated decently. And yet we're sitting in 2023 and we are watching basic human rights being controlled, where people in Gaza are being told what they can do, what they can't do, how much fuel they can have, how much water they can have, how much food they can have, how much of anesthetics they can have in medical facilities. We're watching right of return being controlled. We're watching people fighting for basic rights to be able to survive. This is not even talking about thriving or living, it's about surviving. We in South Africa know this only too well because we have walked this path. We've been through this. We know how difficult it is, but we also know that the momentum for this does not stop. To be able to effect change means that we need to become the voices for the many voiceless that are out there. These women and children do not have their voices. For many years, it's been shunned, it's been quietened down, it's all been told it's in the name of this, it's in the name of that, it's to protect everyone in the world. But if you and I are sitting there and we have the privilege of being able to have this discussion, it means we're living in a society that allows us our basic human rights. Shouldn't this be the set or the groundbreaking rules for every single human being? A two-state solution is not an option. And Amnesty International even posted up about this. That would be saying, like somewhere in South Africa, Nelson Mandela would agree to be living in an apartheid state. It is not a viable option. It didn't work before because of territorial rights, right of return, control of land and resources. So we look at this and we say, what would be an option? And an option of a one-state solution does not mean the total annihilation of another race or another group or another set of belongings. What it means is every single person has a right to live. Every single person has a right to survive. And every single person has equal rights to everything around them. And this is something that we cannot take for granted, and we cannot be living in a society that dictates the rulings around somebody else's ability to be able to breathe. The courts, the organizations, the structures that have been set up in place to protect individuals and to protect peace and to protect justice have failed all of us. There's so much of bureaucracy and red tape to the point that I asked many of the lawyers, what is the point of having all of this if nothing is able to be governed, nothing is able to be put into action? There doesn't seem to be any justice. There doesn't seem to be any reparation. These platforms give us the opportunity to be able to say that even if they are not able to do it, we understand that there are so many of us around the world whose voices will be heard and who will affect change. We've seen this with the number of people who've been coming out in protest, regardless of what each person's government is saying. The people on the ground are speaking a completely different language, and the narrative is changing. And this platform gives us the ability to be able to say, we are going to be those strong voices of change. We are going to be those strong voices that give impactful and sustainable and lasting change to women and children and even the men of Gaza. This session is going to be a total of 90 minutes. According to the UN, children are killed. 1 child every 10 minutes is killed. By the end of this session, 9 children would have passed on. 9 children who had a dream. 9 children who belonged to a family. 9 children who belong to a community. Look around you. Look at your children. Look at your family. Look at your communities, your neighborhoods, your schools. Think of 9 children passing away in one session where we're trying to raise our voices. This session is by no means going to be able to cover every aspect of this genocide, and I know that there are so many of us that would like to unpack very many aspects of this. But this will be the start, and we will continue using our voices, and we will continue using this platform, and we will continue bringing people on who are able to speak up about what they are seeing. This is not hearsay. The people you're going to be speaking today are people who have seen it themselves, are people who can speak firsthand about what they're experiencing. This is not something that we're just taking off social media. This is things that we're critically analyzing. These are things that we're able to actually think about. It's first-hand information. It's first-hand narratives. It's first-hand information that allows you to speak from a point of education, that allows us to step back. And I know it's tough. It's really hard to step back from the emotional aspect. But when we understand that even taking emotions aside, this is an absolute atrocity that is taking place in front of us. When you and I are sitting here, we're already sitting in a privileged circumstance. The fact that you've probably had your breakfast or your dinner, depending on where in the world you're watching from. You know where your children are. You're sitting in a home, or in a studio, in somewhere where you've got access to electricity, access to the internet, access to television studios. You've got your phone next to you. You've probably got something warm to drink. That alone puts you in a position that 100% of people in Palestine do not have. You're already sitting in a far more privileged position than most are. It's time to pay it forward. It's time to use that privilege for something else. And no matter what we're seeing in social media, no matter what we're hearing, it's time to also critically analyze the same rhetoric that we're seeing that seems to justify these atrocities. We can no longer sit by and accept feeble excuses of the justification of a genocide. That should never be okay, nor can it ever happen. One of the key factors for dismantling apartheid in South Africa and rebuilding it was committed individuals who kept the momentum going. And this is what we need to do. Everyone has seen the words of the ceasefire. That's a temporary pause. How can we even talk about a pause? What is a pause for? We don't need a pause. We need an end to this. We need an end to this brutal occupation. We need an end to over 75 years of inflicting rules around somebody else's ability to be able to breathe. This relief is not going to be solving any situation. We have to be able to talk more permanently about permanent and sustainable solutions, meaningful solutions, impactful solutions, and just solutions for the people of Palestine. When you're sitting at home, whether you have children or you don't have children, understand that every child that you are watching has a dream, and you will be hearing about it, and you will be seeing it, and many of these children's dreams have been extinguished. They don't get to have this anymore. They don't get to talk about what they're going to be doing in a year's time, or what they're going to be doing in 5 years' time, or where they see themselves. They can't even talk about where their next meal is coming from, because they have no idea about that. And we're trying to make this as real as possible so that when you see the numbers coming out of there, you understand that this is not just people that you can turn a blind eye to and you can continue your day with. This is about understanding that there are lives just like mine and yours. And in an instant, their lives changed. In an instant, our lives will change. And for the many people asking, why don't they just leave? Why would you leave your home? This is your home. It's your place. It's your sense of belonging. Why would you need to leave it? If somebody walked into your home and told you leave, is it okay for us to tell you, oh, you should just leave because you'll be safer? You would defend your land. You would defend your home. You would defend your country. And this is what they are trying to do. Just like all of us, they need to protect their families, the same way we would protect ours. The reality of the situation in 2023 is astounding. And we're watching a genocide unfold before our eyes. We're watching the words being used to justify it literally be an affirmation to what is being committed. It's ironic that we're watching it and the justification of it. So today we provide to you a platform that gives you a first-hand experience of the women and children. And we hope from this, you get to take key steps forward to be able to make effective changes. Because good words and narratives can be written on any wall. It's time to change that to be able to make those positive changes around us. And don't discount that you, just you watching, can make a difference. You can make that change so that when you're sitting in a few years' time talking to your grandchildren or your children, you can say that you stood on the right side of justice. Our first guest that will be presenting to us is Mrs. Dima Asfour. Dima is the Deputy Ambassador of the State of Palestine to the UN in Geneva. Dima is someone who knows firsthand what this is about. She sits on a number of platforms. She represents the Palestinian people on various international organizations on human rights. She's in charge of negotiating on behalf of Palestine resolutions and reports pertaining to the human rights situation in the occupied Palestinian territories. Dima is someone who knows firsthand what has been going on, that this is not something that is new, and we look forward to hearing her stories.
Good morning, and thank you for everyone for this opportunity, and thank you, Zaya, for your remarks and introduction.
Thank you, Dima, for joining us. I think before we start with you, Dima, we'd like to just play a video first, and then we will start with your presentation. Thank you.
Yeah.
احنا ناس دكتورة كبيرة.
إني أكون مدرسة.
أصير مهندس ونعمل بلدنا.
بحلم إني أدخل الجامعة.
يكون عندي ايباد ويكون يوتيوبر.
مثل عندي سيارة رونالدو. أنا بعرف ألعب كورة. روح حط الكورة فرزي لعب فيها.
عن جد؟
والله.
دكتورة؟ ليش حابة تصيري دكتورة؟
عشان أعالج الناس.
ليش بدك تعالجي الناس؟
عشان حد أصير طيار وأسافر وأحرر القدس وأجيب الناس وأخليها تروح أمريكا تسافر وتشم هوا وتكيف كل شيء. أنا أكون مهندسة.
ليش؟
عشان الاحتلال اليهود لما يقصفوا البيوت أروح أبني البيوت وأبني البلد وأعمرها وأشوف البلد على إيدي إن شاء الله تكون روعة. أكون أميرة بقصر بين غيوم أو مدينة حلوى وشوكولاتة مارشميلو. أعيش أنا وأطفال غزة بخير والقدس بدلها لنا وغزة انتصرت. ما إنه يقصفوا بيوت وبروش ويخافونا كده ويطلعوا ناس من بيوتهم. يا رب كلنا نضل عايشين.
نرجع على الأقصى، نرجع أرضنا وديومنا بيتنا مع بيت جدي القديم نشوف إيش في غادة.
إيش كمان؟
خلص هو في حلم غير أن نرجع على الأرض وكل واحد نرجع على أرضنا وخلص.
I think watching that, you realize the dreams are the same as dreams of children all over the world. This is the reality, where dreams are being crushed. Because right now, the only dreams you can have are literally to be able to eat some food or have a drink. Dima is for the Deputy Ambassador of the State of Palestine to the UN in Geneva. Dima, assalamu alaikum and welcome to Hilaal TV studios.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Good morning. It's extremely difficult to report on the complete destruction of one of the largest Palestinian cities, if not the largest contemporary city under Palestinian rule. The disruption to life and unfathomable amount of the destruction makes it difficult to report all this in numbers. But I'm gonna give you some statistics just to try to summarize the catastrophe we are watching unfold. Day 47 of Israel's latest genocidal campaign. More than 14,000 people have been killed. That is 0.6% of the population.
I think Dima's Zoom link.
14,000.
Dima, can you hear us? We're just double checking on your Zoom link coming through.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay. Nearly 75% of the more than 14,000, including at least 5,600 children and 3,550 women. It is notable that the reason Gaza has such a high number of children is its people's historical fear of ethnic cleansing. According to OCHA, 70% of the population of Gaza are legally classified as refugees, meaning that they have family history of displacement and ethnic cleansing. As such, the high percentage of children speaks to the wider context and history of settler colonial violence where these hostilities are currently underway. Meanwhile, the living conditions of those who have survived amount to what international legal scholars are describing as collective torture. At least 33,000 Palestinians have been injured, while 26 out of 35 hospitals and 55 medical centers are out of service. Untreated, the pain from injuries inflicted using the most advanced of weapons is unimaginable. More than 6,800 are missing, either trapped under the rubble or in the form of bodies that have yet to be identified. The delay in rescue mission is caused by the shortage of resources mandated by Israel. 44,000 residential units, 45% of all residential units have been destroyed in Gaza, and 230,000 have been damaged. And we are hearing now and unashamedly how Israeli officials are now openly talking of reconstruction efforts after the complete destruction of the city. According to UNRWA, 1.7 million people have been displaced across Gaza since October 7. Meanwhile, 60% of all housing in Gaza have been made unlivable due to the Israeli offensive. And as the weather gets colder, hundreds of thousands of traumatized families are left without shelter. According to UNICEF, fuel shortages and worsening sanitary conditions in Gaza have created a massive breeding ground for the spread of disease. There is a lack of water with fecal matter scattered across densely populated settlements. There are lack of latrines and severe restraints on hand washing, personal hygiene, and cleaning. The current conditions, if not addressed, will create a surge in the number of child deaths. Most shelters in Gaza are not adequately equipped for the 15% of displaced people with disabilities, according to OCHA. Gaza has a notably high percentage of disabled peoples as a result of prior assault by Israel, which left many disabled. The lack of required medical mattresses and beds have caused ulcers for those unable to move, along with other medical issues that can't be treated in unsterilized conditions. As this genocidal campaign is affecting every Palestinian, but yet today, I will focus on women and children. Women and children represent more than half of the population in Gaza. The genocide unfolding has left a growing number of mothers for whom the loss of livelihoods, housing, land will have a catastrophic impact. Moreover, the lack of access to sanitation facilities and hospitals, coupled with the lack of hygiene supplies, expose women and children to diseases and infections. More than 180 women who are giving birth in Gaza every day are doing so without medical assistance. Some in overcrowded shelters or on the streets amidst the rubble, where they risk medical complications and infections that could threaten their own lives as well as the lives of their newborn babies. In addition to the women who are undergoing C-sections without proper anesthesia, the mothers who are unable to breastfeed for lack of proper nutrition and forced to use contaminated water to prepare formula. Due to the lack of capacity in hospitals, women are being discharged within as little as 3 hours after giving birth. And tragically, we are now witnessing premature babies dying because there's no power to run incubators that could keep them alive. Moreover, amidst that dire food insecurity, women and children, especially pregnant and breastfeeding women, are malnutritioned, which will negatively affect their immune health, increasing their exposure to contracting maternal nutrition-related illnesses such as anemia, and increasing the risk of death for both mothers and babies. Add to that, the generations of Palestinian children under the Israeli colonial rule have seen their lives reduced to the bare minimum and cut short as expendable, taking away the lightness of childhood, robbing them of their future and shattering their dreams. Thousands of children are still missing, buried under the rubble, dying painful and protracted deaths as they are suffocated by the remains of their homes. Thousands of children are orphaned, children whose lives have been destroyed, children with no single family member left. Indeed, a new acronym was invented by medical staff in Gaza. WCNSF, Wounded Child, No Surviving Family, as Israel decimates one family after another. Such an acronym should never have come into existence. In addition to that, more children who are slowly dying from hunger and thirst. the children who are getting sick from drinking sewage and seawater, the children who have survived and are enduring trauma that is beyond comprehension. What happened on October 7 did not occur in a vacuum. It's the result of 75 years of domination and subjugation of the Palestinian people, 56 years of illegal occupation, and 16 years of blockade. And any narrative that does not acknowledge these root causes is simply inaccurate and hypocritical. This narrative is currently being used by right-wing governments to justify an ongoing genocide. Experts have called this atrocity propaganda, akin to what was popularized by Serbian media prior to the genocide of Bosnians. What is even more horrifying, the complicity of Israel's allies, whose politicians happen to be major beneficiaries of the international arms trade and energy markets. This war has generated immense profits for arms corporations and is now being used to bolster energy exploitation aspirations in the region. These states are now aiding and abetting the commission of international crimes and genocide, including through sending further military aid to exterminate the Palestinian civilian population in Gaza. And domestically, they are also criminalizing peaceful forms of protest in solidarity with the Palestinian people, including the BDS movement, and suppressing freedom of speech. But the complicity of such states is not new. It's part and parcel of its colonial project in the region and the global South as a whole, with the purpose of domination and through systemic legitimization of violent invasion and restructuring of society and economies as benevolent and necessary, for immediate profit at the expense of those who inhabit the lands from which resources are being extracted and their lands abused. The tactic of dehumanization and other similar tactics that suggest that people in those countries are incapable of managing their own resources, including the human capital. It has become clear to many around the world that the colonial mindset narrative is no longer of value. The genocidal campaign in Gaza and throughout occupied Palestine should serve as a wake call to all of us. It should serve as a call to our humanity to acknowledge that no one is free until we are all free. Free from oppression, free from the neo-colonial mindset that only serves to exploit our humanity for massive profit. Free from a way of living that is killing us by not investing in our well-being or the well-being of the planet. Free from a patriarchal mindset which favors domination over cooperation. Now is the time to reconsider the whole political and social structure imposed on us. Now is the time to ask the big questions. Now is the time to break free from our fears, especially when speaking about Palestine. This is the time to understand that privilege is a massive responsibility that must be used to put an end to these cycles of oppression. You might be listening to this word thinking this is an impossible task. Let me tell you, it is a task that will require a lot of work, and the journey is long. However, it is not impossible. This is a moment in history where international effort is needed to end domination. In this, it is similar to the moment apartheid ended in South Africa and colonization ended in Algeria. I'm here to ask you to use your privilege, to give voice to voiceless, and to empower a new generation to chart a future that can ensure that no one would ever have to live through such atrocity, and to immediately stopping any further and possible instruction in Gaza. For this, I call on you to take every possible action and use your power and influence towards a real change. A change that will give a chance to future generations to experience the feeling of liberation, to experience the feeling of freedom, to experience what it means to prosper. We call on you to keep talking and learning about Palestine, to call for an immediate ceasefire, to call for an arms embargo, to boycott and divest from any corporation that aims at supporting the capitalist and colonial approach, to support local products and shops, to support more initiatives that aims at cultivating the lands, to exert pressure, to use your influence to ensure that all perpetrators of war crimes, crimes against humanity, are held accountable.
And of course, now we have the child protection
The
policy.
activity of the in discourse.
This year, we
While
also got
humanitarian aid is very
policy
crucial
and
and
HGD
now to alleviate the suffering of Can you hear me?
You can continue, Dima.
Okay. We call on you to exert pressure and use your influence to ensure that all perpetrators of war crimes, crimes against humanity are held accountable, to not fall prey into the reductivity of the humanitarian discourse. While humanitarian aid is very crucial and needed now to alleviate the suffering, it is often used to circumvent the core questions at the heart of transitional justice, recognition, accountability, and reparations. That if we truly wish to break the cycle of dependency on colonial powers and aid. As we think about the future, it is crucial to empower Palestine voices and include leaders from Gaza and the diaspora that desires to go back to Gaza, to invest in the human capital and the creative minds of those that have learned to adapt and innovate to survive. Such minds should be given the platforms to benefit their people and humanity as a whole. Those are the true leaders, and we need to invest in them if we truly wish to see a sustainable future for the region as a whole. As it becomes more clear that this wage war was more about control of Gaza's natural resources, we should also remember that it's priority to invest not only in relief, but in mechanisms that can achieve a sustainable economy. Education is key. As we invest in an education that speaks truth to power, accepts plurality, and celebrates the ideals of justice, tolerance, acceptance, love, empathy, and understanding. Let me remind also of the necessity to understand the significance of the mental health crisis. As such, centering education around the well-being of the people is of special importance in Gaza. It goes without saying that in this day and age, we should create education environments that encourages critical thinking and makes room for the exploration of all our potential as human beings. Let's build new systems that teach us liberation instead of discrimination, one that can help change our realities as women in the region and break this pattern of oppression that hunted us for decades, that devastated one generation after another. Let's build new inclusive systems which genuinely integrate the experiences of those who lived under domination. New systems where integration is premised on agency and resilience rather than victimhood. I call on you to keep in mind that ceasefire is not the end. What will come after the ceasefire will be more vicious and insidious. Keep talking. Keep your anger and keep your outrage. The journey has just started, a journey to liberation, freedom, justice, and dignity. As we, the Palestinians, fight for our liberation, we are witnessing the whole world awaken to fight with us for our humanity and dignity against all forms of oppression. I will quote here Edward Said, who said, "The solidarity shown to Palestine here and everywhere. And remember also, there is a cause to which many people have committed themselves, difficulties and terrible obstacles notwithstanding. Why? Because it's a just cause, a noble ideal, a moral quest for equality and human rights." End of quote. People will remember this time in history. People will look back at this time when an occupied, besieged population, mainly consisting of refugees and children, was cut off from food, water, electricity, fuel, and telecommunication, and was being bombed to the ground. And they will remember where people, where governments, and where every person with influence and power stood. Right now, we all have a responsibility to guide, advise, simply for the sake of humanity. You can make a difference. Indeed, you have a duty to make a difference. When there's a genocide happening, no one can just sit by as if nothing is happening. For the sake of humanity, for the sake of justice that can lead to peace, let's work together towards liberation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dima. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. Dima Asfour, the Deputy Ambassador of the State of Palestine to the UN. Dima's made so many valid points, and I have no doubt it'll come up in the questions and answers as well. But it is time to relook at our political and social structures that define what democracy is, that define what civilized society is. When we understand about the impactful changes that she mentioned, it's also about the economic impactful changes. And it's time to support innovative local ideas for the people that are living in Gaza, to enable food security, to enable aspects that they are able to rely on building their own economies without having to rely on handouts. One of the factors that Dima mentioned as the context of colonialist, oppressive regimes that have controlled the mindsets of people. When, Dima, you mentioned with the amount of children Palestinian families have, it takes me back to a conversation I had with a woman in Gaza who said to me, most Palestinian families will have 6 children because in that, one will go away and live abroad and be able to send money back home to look after you. 2 will be incarcerated for absolutely no reasons. 2 will die in every war that comes up, and 1 will be left to look after you. Understand the mindset of families that have been oppressed for so many years, that this is how it's seen as being a norm as to why you have to have big families. How your families will be obliterated, how your families will be oppressed, how your families will be controlled. I think the reality that Dima brings forward is something that brings home everything that we have been reading. It's no longer just a narrative. It's a reality that many are living at the moment. We'll be moving on to our next video and then to our next speaker, Lina Hadid, someone who is synonymous with the Palestinian cause, someone who stands up for human rights and for justice wherever she sees it. She's a lawyer, an activist, and a founder of the Palestinian Lobby. She's a co-host of the Palestine Pod and is also featured in the cookbook Craving Palestine. We'll move on to the video and then to Lina.
وناشد السيسي وابو مازن ودولة الإمارات أنا مقدرش أطلع بدون مرافق. أبوي استشهد وأمي خواتي مصابات وأخواني وحباتي كلهم صغير واستشهدوا. مقدرش أطلع بدون مرافق. لازم تشوفولي حل. مقدرش أمشي. مش كنت تشوفولي حل ما بمشيش معي.
قديش عمرك؟
12 سنة.
ممكن توصف لي وتتذكر وقتاش اليوم اللي تصوبت فيه ووين؟
كان يوم الأربعاء 11/10. نزل علينا صاروخين على سيدي وإحنا كنا بالمضافع. نزل علينا الصاروخ وننحرق كلنا. أروق من درجة طيبتي كلها. ايدي مجبصات رجلي مجبصات. مظلش في عيل يرحمونا.
على وين طريقك هلقيت انت؟
على الإمارات.
كيف تم التواصل معك والهذا؟ عن طريق
المستشفى.
يعني حالتك كان صعب انك تتعالج في غزة فاضطروا انهم يحولوك على الامارات، صحيح؟
صحيح.
تحكي لي ايش اللي صار بالضبط في هذا الموضوع؟
كنا عادي يطلع مع المرافق كله كويس كان. أجي الحين بيقولك المرافق ممنوع يطلع. مقدرش أنا أتحرك أصلا. كيف بدي أطلع لحالي كيف؟
That's the children of Gaza, the children of Palestine. I'd like to now introduce and welcome Lina Hadid, the founder of the Palestine Lobby. Lina, assalamu alaikum and welcome to Hilaal TV. Lena, can you hear me clearly? I think we just need sound on Lena's side. Lena, if you just give us a moment, we are correcting that sound. We know there have been a lot of people trying to get in via the Zoom link as well. Please note that this is recorded. It will be available from the Hilaal TV studios. We have managed to control the Zoom link. And Lena, we hope we've got you back online now. Lena, assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Zahira, for having us today. Thank you for the introduction. And a real special thank you to everyone out there today who is taking the time out for Palestine. I know that it's not easy. It's excellent to see activism in action. I genuinely believe that we can all build alliances across the world to conquer dispossession, occupation, and oppression to free Palestine. Several myths have been created about the term Free Palestine, which I will dispel today. To understand what Free Palestine means, I want to share my story, the story of my mother, and the story of my grandparents and family, whose happy lives in Palestine ended abruptly. I am the first generation born outside of Palestine, to my mother, Ghada Hadid. My grandmother, Khayriya Dahir Hadid, and the generations before her all came from Nazareth, Palestine. My grandfather came from Safed. Well-funded propaganda has misled people to believe that Palestine was a bare land with no civilization, but this is an outrageous lie. Palestine was a land rich in culture, where the three Abrahamic religions, which all stem from Abraham, coexisted. In the 1920s, Palestine was a trading hub for soap, grain, and cotton. The land itself produced nuts, oranges, and olives that were in fact even pressed to extract oil used at King Charles' coronation and all of the monarchs preceding him who had occupied Palestine. Palestine had schools, airports, roads, railroads that connected the old city to the ports and cities. Palestine was then and is today a place of geopolitical importance at the crossroads of Asia, Africa, and Europe. Palestine possessed a currency, cuisine, art, and literature that was erased from our history and misappropriated. Hence, people believed the lie that Palestinians did not exist and that nothing existed until the founding of Israel. The British occupied Israel, but they were not the only ones. On November 26, 1926, the New York Times reported in an article titled, "The Pritchett Reports Zionism Will Fail." Dr. Pritchett was a trustee at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. In that article, Dr. Pritchett stated, and I quote, "A few German colonies instituted many years ago have proved successful in Palestine because of the character and ability of these colonialists." A reminder, this article was printed in November 1926. In 1948, that dreadful period referred to as the Nakba came. My grandparents, my mother, and her three siblings were violently forced out of their home by Zionist colonialists. I want to take this moment to emphasize that Zionism and Judaism have nothing to do with each other. And it is possible to be anti-Zionist and to criticize the government of Israel. That does not mean that you dislike Jewish people. Just as all Arabs are not Muslims. Arabs are Muslims, Arabs are Christians, and Arabs are Jews. I am thankful to the many Jewish people who see this as a non-religious injustice and the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people. My mother was just 4 years old when she was violently removed from her home in Palestine by settlers who were offered shelter by her parents, my grandparents. As I tell you the story of my mother and how she had to flee Palestine, You cannot ignore the fact that the narrative of the Palestinian child has remained the same for decades. A child needs love, a child needs care, a child needs nurturing. Yet, a child born in Palestine faces the risk of genocide from the very moment that that child is born. My mother and her family fled Palestine by walking to Damascus, Syria. In Syria, 4 more of my mother's siblings were born in exile from their homeland. From Syria, they went to Lebanon. From Lebanon, they went to Tunisia. From Tunisia, they traveled to Greece, finally landing in the United States. My hardworking, intelligent, ambitious, beautiful, and extremely well-educated mother, judging from the collection of her degrees, had a very hard time in the United States despite all of these exceptional qualities. Her Palestinian identity was denied from the first time she entered the United States at the age of 16. Her passport stated for her entire life that she was born nowhere. They refused to accept Nazareth, Palestine, 1944, as Palestine. Growing up in America, I experienced very similar events as my mother had. I was denied my Palestinian existence. I was told Palestine does not exist and therefore Palestinians do not exist. My mother passed in 2022, Allah yarhamha, with a dream of her final resting place to be in Nazareth, Palestine. But this hope was not realized. And I do not believe it is impossible one day in this lifetime. I tell the story of my mother and my family. I keep their memory alive so that I can keep their Palestinian identity alive, and so that the generations who come after me also know that they existed. Palestinians are no different than the next person. They have hopes, they have dreams, they have ambitions just like everyone, like you and like me. I want you to join us so that no future generations tell the same story that I am sharing with you. I want you to help me free Palestine. I want you to help me rewrite the decade-long narrative of dispossession, occupation, and oppression. A free Palestine is not a difficult concept to grasp. It is merely allowing Palestinians to be human and have choices about their own lives and destinies, not to be controlled by the state of Israel or any occupier or oppressor. The concept of freedom is not new, and it is certainly not foreign. Dr. King asked for freedom during the civil rights movement in the United States. And my favorite leader of this, at least since I've been alive, who is no longer with us, Nelson Mandela, asked for freedom during the apartheid years in South Africa. Many nations across the world have broken free from the chains of colonization. Palestine is absolutely not different, and this can happen. As a Palestinian in Gaza, what they dream of doing, when you ask them, the answer is simple. They dream of going to the movie theater. How often do we take these simple pleasures for granted? As Zahira said, and Dima, a ceasefire is for immediate, but this will not address the root cause of the disease, which is dispossession, occupation, and oppression. I encourage all of us to work together and to collaborate to free Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you, Lina, for highlighting the power of the Palestinian diaspora. I think we take for granted how easy it is and how important it is to have a sense of identity and a sense of belonging, and understand that this is continuously being shared by people who belong to Palestine, who belong to the land of Palestine all across the world. And the more we share this, the more we ensure that the narrative of truth is held, that this identity belongs to the people who live there, that this identity belongs to the people who've been displaced from there. And this identity will always belong to the families and the generations of the inhabitants of Palestine. And it's something that we need to ensure that we continue supporting. I think when you understand how intrinsically intertwined our identities are to who we are in this world and the voices that we have and the stand that we take and what we're able to use, we understand the power behind it. And we can also then see why this push to take away every part of the cultural identity of Palestinians is being pushed so forward. Because when you start erasing all of that, you start making people wonder what narrative really did exist beforehand. And hats off to the communities around the world who've continued to hold on so strongly to their identities. Lena, you spoke about hope, and I listened to the story of your mum and families, and I can only imagine how heartbreaking that is. Because as people, as South Africans, we can get into Jerusalem, we can travel easily there, we can visit the most holy of sites, the third holiest site for Muslims around the world. But for the people of Palestine, they're not even able to get there, to be able to enjoy what their own country has. And I think we take for granted the ease of those privileges that we have. I recently chatted to cousins of mine whose dad was very active in the liberation struggle in South Africa. And they were describing what it was like when people would come in the middle of the night and take their dad away. And I asked them, did you ever think you would see the end of apartheid? And their answer was, not in our lifetime. And yet here we are. And I think no matter how desperate or how desolate the situation looks, we will always hold on to hope. That's part of who we are, our faith, but it's also part of the human spirit that we hold on to hope that effective change will take place. And like we said, it's not just the temporary change, it's effective change, it's impactful change, it's sustainable change, because every single person is deserving of that. The resilience that we see coming out in light of the dispossession, the occupation, and the oppression is something that is giving hope to the people around the world. And we need to keep this momentum going and understand that the ceasefire is nothing short of a temporary pause. The momentum we keep going will ensure that there will be sustainable and effective change, inshallah. We'd like to now open the platform to questions. I have my panelists, Lena and Dima, who will be available to answer them. I know that there are a number of questions that are going to be coming forth. We will have to time them, and unfortunately we are trying to consolidate them. We have an entire team of producers in the background who are trying to consolidate and collate that information and those questions so that we can get through as many as we possibly can during this time. I think I will start off with the first one while we're waiting for the first call to come through. You are welcome to call us. The numbers are available. You can contact us on the Zoom chat via the Zoom link, or you can call us in studio on the Hilaal TV studios. The numbers are online as well. You are also welcome to WhatsApp your questions as well, and we will make sure that we get to the answers that you are looking for to make sense of the craziness and the chaos that we're currently seeing. Lena, I think one of the first questions to start with, being a lawyer and being an activist in this field, is many of us have been wondering what is the purpose of organizations like the ICC, the UN, Amnesty International, if we are regularly seeing laws being flouted, international laws being flouted. Is there any accountability, or are certain people and certain countries just above the law? I think we're just waiting for Lena's mic to be unmuted, and then we will get Lena. Are you there? Okay, we'll be getting to Lena shortly. But like I said, the numbers are available on the screen. Please call through with your questions. You are welcome to WhatsApp the questions. We do have a number of questions that are coming through, and we are doing our best to be able to get through all of them. We're just waiting for our participants to come through online, and we will be addressing the questions shortly. Lena, are you with us? Fantastic.
Yeah.
Lena, did you hear the question, or would you like me to repeat it?
I did, in fact. Unfortunately, there appears to be an unknown, secret, private, carved out exception for the state of Israel when it concerns the ICC and the ICJ. And even when it concerns the United Nations. I think that this has become so incredibly ridiculous at this point that it's superfluous for all of these attorneys that are working so hard to have Israel condemned in the ICC and ICJ, and yet nothing comes short of it. So I think that we need to reanalyze what applies to the state of Israel, what exactly does their occupation entail, since it actually has no rules or regulations, and so it just leaves us to an endless occupation. I think that we need to take matters also a little bit more into our own hands, much like Nelson Mandela had to do decades ago, because the international legal community is unable to reprimand Israel today. That has become very clear, with the United States as the stronghold behind them and multiple European countries. So we cannot enforce any sort of ICC or ICJ decisions against the state of Israel. It's useless at this point. So we're going to have to take matters into our own hands as far as the international community is concerned, and any of those that support the state of Palestine and the Palestinian struggle.
Thank you for that. I think from the South African side, I know that there are a number of lawyers who are involved in putting through charges of a criminal level that have now been taken through to the ICC from our government. So I think that call from the international community to be able to push forward is something that is being strongly taken to, and I think it's been fantastic on that front, because we understand that even if you think you're a small voice, those voices make a difference for the long term.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. I think for the next question, Dima, one of the questions has come through. We spoke about lack of access to feminine hygiene, feminine care, health care, and this is something that has come through very strongly. I know we've got this message from Yasmin Musaji Lunat from Amsterdam in terms of feminine health and feminine health care in Gaza. Can you speak to that? Dima, you can go ahead. We're just ensuring that Dima's mic is switched on. Dima, as soon as you've got us, you can just let us know. I think this is something that we know that as women, it's a problem through many parts of the world, but more so in Gaza, where there is absolutely no access to clean running water, to basic access and to basic health and needs that a woman would have. Dima, I'm not sure if you've heard my question. Shall I repeat it?
I heard the question.
Please go ahead.
Everyone hear me? Yeah. So as I said when I spoke before, it is a very major problem, and it is also the issue of the water, that we don't have clean water. But I think the main issue that comes with this question is why we are not able to get these basic things to women in Gaza and other basic needs to population in Gaza in general is because of the siege. It's because of the blockade. The blockade has been going on for 16 years, as I've said before. But since October 7, Israel has even tightened this siege. They're not allowing anything to get in, very minimal and very, I have to say, unneeded things that are only getting in. I mean, we've been hearing how all that has been getting in is body bags and COVID tests. And it's very outrageous that this is what they're only getting in. We've seen how many times aid trucks have been bombarded and been obstructed to get in. So there are ways, and a lot of aid is waiting and a lot of aid is there, but this is what we need from you, is to exert more pressure to have this aid in. And we can always provide you with more information, with more organizations who specifically work on women to let you know how to help. But really the main issue is that these aids and whatever we're trying to get in is not getting in because of the siege. So your voice is important to keep talking about this and to exert pressure as much as possible to let this aid get in, at least for the short term.
Dima, I'm just going to keep you on the line. I know that on a regular basis, from what we've been told from relief aid organizations, is on a daily basis, pre this siege and this current onslaught having started, 500 trucks per day were going into Gaza on a general basis to assist with needs. From the 7th of October to current, there's only been 1,000 trucks that have gone in. And we know that with the current numbers that we're seeing, far more people are going to be in need of aid. How are we even going to be able to reach those people? And also with regards to the amount of control that's being exercised at the borders, even with the lifting of the siege, with this temporary ceasefire, with the temporary letting in of aid, please also understand that from many relief aid organizations, we are hearing about what's being checked and what's being removed off the trucks. Dr. Mads Gilbert himself spoke about anesthetics being removed off the truck. So in terms of medical care that's even going in, Dima, you spoke about women who are giving birth, premature babies. There isn't even enough fuel to currently run all of this. So even with the aid coming in, if there's no fuel to be running the hospitals, we're still seeing a consistent onslaught.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, as you said, before October 7, 500 trucks were getting in, but even that was honestly the bare minimum for the population in Gaza to survive. They were surviving literally on the bare minimum. Israel is controlling even the calories that the population in Gaza eats. They're controlling everything. And now it's even a more dire situation. It's catastrophic and it's beyond comprehension at this point. UNRWA has said that without fuel, they will not be able to continue their humanitarian operation. And many other humanitarian agencies have addressed this issue. So fuel is very important at this point. And if we don't get fuel in, many other aids, it's important, yes, but it will not be useful because hospitals will not be able to operate without fuel, and many other humanitarian operations that many organizations are trying to continue doing will not be able, and some are not able to do and continue their work right now. So again, the problem is, it's a bigger problem, it's a broader problem. We all want to get aid, and we appreciate everyone that's trying to help, and we urge you to continue doing so. But the main problem is the blockade that is ongoing and is imposed on Gaza. And not just now it's just tightened, but even before, as I said, all that was entering is just the bare minimum.
One of the questions that has come through is what does, okay, actually, before we take this next question, we've got a caller online. Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Who am I speaking to?
It's Suhaifa Bamji.
Suhaifa Bamji, if you could kindly let us know where you're calling from, and you can pose your question to our panel.
I'm calling from KZN, and I'm also a lawyer type person, but at my core, I'm really just a human being. And everything that's been said by the speakers and by yourself, Lina and Dima, resonates very deeply if you have any type of heartbeat. And what you said about, what everyone said about basic human rights, that they come because we exist as human beings, the fact that they need to be written down is quite shocking when you understand the very many abuses that have happened throughout history. And a phrase that does come to mind, I won't say the Latin because it's quite a tongue twister, is who watches the watchers? Where's the accountability for organizations like the UN? Where's the accountability for, I don't even want to call it a state, but whatever Israel is? Where's there more than just a slap on the wrist, but where's their sanction?
Thank you.
And that's a very important question, I think, that needs to be asked. But thank you for these words.
Thank you so much for sharing that sentiment and that thought. I think you're absolutely right with regards to Who watches the watchers? Lena, perhaps you can speak to this. The question is on the accountability of the media and information that is being coming out that is against the truth and the narrative of the Palestinian cause.
Unfortunately, the Western media is completely controlled by the Zionists, and I don't think that that is a surprise to anyone here. The problem is that it has been very difficult for the Palestinians for the last 75 years to get the accurate narrative out. The narrative has been completely controlled by the Zionists, starting from probably 1917, the Balfour Declaration. So the best that the Palestinians can do today is rely on social media, which is definitely also a Zionist platform for the most part, at least when it comes to the Meta. But still, we're showing that we are able to reach a lot of our audience, especially Generation Z and this new generation called Alpha. As far as us disseminating information, it's really on a piecemeal basis, and we have to rely on very, very, good organizations like the IMEU, journals like the Electronic Intifada. We do, in fact, Mondoweiss, we do, in fact, have accurate reporting, but it's being disseminated on such a small basis just because of the omnipresent media that exists today. Now, remember, we're dealing with something in the West where there not only is there all of the Israeli propaganda, but there is also all of the propaganda that goes around the diaspora that the Jewish people in Europe experienced. So there is a control mechanism which constantly allows Americans and Westerners to believe that the creation of the State of Israel was to rectify the wrongdoing of the Europeans during the World War II. This is a constant message that we see being applied over and over in the media, in movies, in TV series, and the like. I think what we can do is invest more in alternative medias, but at the same time, our objective is to get the message out to the people that are, in fact, being brainwashed by the Zionist media. So the only option we have is to try to get on their platforms and try to disseminate proper information about what's actually happening in Palestine and what's been happening over the last 75 years. We're having a very tough time. When Rupert Murdoch owns as much as he owns in the media, it's very difficult. So I think looking for alternative medias, including those countries that are our allies, which are very far and few between, but we are lucky to have a few of them. I think we have to focus on their medias. We have to focus heavily on Electronic Intifada, which has existed for 20 plus years, and just try to source it alternatively. But thank God for this social media monster, because we really have been able to affect Gen Z and Alpha.
I think I love the way you've mentioned the electronic intifada. I think that's such an accurate description of it, because every single person out there, don't discount what your posts, your likes, or your comments mean or make a difference in refocusing and reshaping the narrative, and you have control of that. Each of you out there is a journalist in your own right. You don't like what the media is watching and what they're saying. So the last caller, Suhaifa Bamji, the lawyer from KZN, said, who's watching the watchers? We are, and we're going to hold them accountable. So when you are posting things, step back from the emotion, make sure you're educated, make sure you have the information. These are easily accessible, and we will post up an email address at the end of this should you require any further information. But when you're armed with information and education and you're standing on the side of truth and justice, you can't be wrong. So make sure you use your platforms to interact and to spread the message and to spread the truth of what is currently happening. Lena, while you are on the line, the next question that came through is, what does this deal, the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas deal, what does it mean for the people of Gaza? What does it mean for the layperson, for the woman, and for the children of Gaza?
Unfortunately, I don't think that this pause, it is not an official ceasefire. I do not think that this pause is going to help the people of Gaza that much, unfortunately, nor the people of Palestine. I think that it's just a temporary they're going to readjust themselves. They're going to try to get as many Palestinians to leave the Palestinian territory, to leave occupied Palestine and to go into the neighboring countries, in which case, very clearly, this will just be the continuation of the Nakba, and these people, like my family in 1948, will never be able to return to occupied Palestine. So we're actually quite concerned about this. I'm also very concerned about the fact that there's no pressure on the Israelis to get medical supplies and sanitary supplies into Gaza. This is a huge problem. I have seen and studied many earthquake relief measures that well, it doesn't matter, but during the last series of earthquakes. And one thing that I have realized very quickly, that countries were all around the world and people themselves were motivated to send supplies into these earthquake relief, to these earthquake relief funds, and to help the victims and to help actually remove them from the rubble. Whereas in the case of Gaza, which is not even an earthquake, it's a man-made attack, violent attack on innocent civilians that are living in the world's largest concentration camp, which consists, the official record, of 2.5 million people. So we're not even able to get them basic necessities while they are literally under bombs. Yet when it comes to an earthquake, even for countries like Turkey and Syria, there are there's heavy action, call to action for people to help with supplies and to help remove the victims from the earthquakes. So I cannot understand why this is taking so long in Gaza. What we need is an immediate ceasefire, and it has to be a permanent ceasefire. And along with that ceasefire, then we need to address the root issue, which is the occupation, which is the dispossession, which is the oppression of the Palestinians. But for now, we're not even able to get basic medical supplies. As Dima told you, the only thing the Israelis are allowing in are COVID tests and body bags. Body bags, by the way, that are arriving in 3 sizes: male, female, and children. This is absolutely appalling. It's appalling to the entire world community that we aren't doing anything to help these people in Gaza, who are, clearly we could be saving lives right now as we're speaking.
Thank you for that, and I think you're absolutely right. It's appalling what is actually getting in. I think the narrative is very clear. If all you're sending in is body bags for the Palestinians, more than anything else, and thank you for correcting me, it's just a temporary pause. It's nothing more than that. We have got the next question from Rima. I think the question coming in, this is from Safia Suji, in terms of, if we're addressing activism from the outside, this is all of us speaking on the outside of Palestine, how are we speaking about the resistance coming in from inside Palestine? How do we support it? Is that discourse being heard? Are we correctly narrating that discourse? As Dima, and I know Riyam is also online, I'm not sure if we do have her on the Zoom link, but Dima, Riyam, you are observers from the state of Palestine. You know exactly what is going on firsthand. Do you find that the discourse that we are narrating, that we are managing, is reflective of the people that are in Palestine? Or is this something that we're doing literally from a point of privilege and speaking about on the outside?
Thank you. I mean, if I understand the question right, the discourse amongst some is still a little bit concerning to us, at least from the circle that we are in. That the concept of resistance needs to be enforced, and we need to enforce the idea even under international law. The law that everyone is boasting about, governments are talking about, are referring to in terms of respect, and to abide, and asking us and asking everyone to abide to. But obviously, with what's happening now and for the past 75 years and during all the years that I've been working here, we've been witnessing how Israel probably basically have a special law applies to it. So we need to enforce the concept of we do have the right to resist under international law. within the norms of international law, while Israel do not have the right to defend itself, because this is something that we've been hearing a lot. And under international law, this is not accurate. We are under occupation, we are under oppression, we are colonized, and Israel do not have the right to invoke the right of self-defense under the legal norms. So this is something we need to keep focusing on, and we need to enforce it more and more when we're speaking about this and when we share on social media. So this is my answer.
Thank you, Dima. Thank you very much. I know, Lena, I wanted to get your input on this as well, but I will come back to you as well. We are going to be going to our Zoom call. We have a question from Manzila in the UK. We're just waiting for her to get online, and then we will take her call, her comment, or her question with it as well. I think this is so much to unpack. We could possibly have entire conversations on each one of these questions because they are so pertinent for the very many people that are living there. Thank you, Dima, for sharing that. And Lena, will ask you to please hold on to that question so that you can come back with an answer on it as well. Have we got Manzila Udin online?
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Hi. Yes, thank you very much. I'm sorry I missed the earlier presentation. My name is Manzila Udin. I'm a member of the House of Lords in UK Parliament. I just really, what can any one of us say that is not been already said by you and many others since this incredible onslaught and massacre has commenced. I just want to say that, you know, we're here in solidarity with Dina and Lena and every other person who has any connections, families who are there themselves right now in Gaza and Palestine generally. We are doing everything we can against the onslaught of the media portrayal of the belligerent manners, the positioning of our government. As you know, it's been incredibly difficult. And what's been very worrying, I've been a member of the Labour Party for 47 odd years. And I can tell you, it's the most disheartening thing to see that our leader of the opposition has taken similar stance. So I think I just want to say, I don't want to occupy so much of the time, but I just want to say we're here, we're doing everything we can. Our population are awake. I think that, you know, our public are awakened to the horrendous horrors that we are seeing. We all feel hopeless and helpless, except that we do have a voice, except that we do need to make sure that we reach out to all parts of our communities, not just in the West, but also in the Muslim majority countries. And our leadership, Muslim leadership in many of the Middle Eastern countries has really have demonstrated utter inhumanity by the fact that they're not standing up as a collective, because that's what we need against the positioning of the current audacious leadership of Europe, Britain, as well as America, you know, alongside other Western countries, the kind of bellicose that we are now becoming used to. In order to resist that, we have to make sure that we, you know, collectively inspire the kind of movement that are going on already, but it needs to be on a bigger scale. And I just want to make the final point about the influencing media. Those media voices that want to raise any points contrary to the popular genocidal, actually, the propaganda that is being displayed in Parliament and out of Parliament. It's it's really, our voices are very, very difficult to penetrate beyond. And I myself have been censored already by Meta and various other small medium that I operate in. None of my Palestine-related materials are going through to even my friends. So I think that, it's very, very concerning. I just want to say that we stand with everyone here, and my heart goes out to Dina, who's already in the place. We are trying to do everything we can. One of the things that a few of us in Parliament are trying to see is that whether we can actually go to the borders of Rafah with some aids. It's really just trying to see whether we can be at the border as moral, physical support, and I don't know. I mean, there are lots of ideas that are being talked about. We have another march tomorrow.
Thank you. That's Baroness Manzila Udin from the UK Parliament. And Baroness, we're very, very grateful for your insights and your thoughts. And I think it is reflective of the fact that we know that there are a number of governments who are saying one thing, but the people on the ground are saying something completely different. And I think your support in this situation is hugely appreciated and welcomed. And I think the Baroness also reinforced the social media presence, the support that is coming through with the narrative of change. The next comment, Riam, I know you are online and I'm hoping you can take this, is from Shaheen Taj in the UK. And she says, we live in a world where we are encouraged to apply a trauma-informed approach. However, for generations of the narrative of Palestinian children haven't changed. Instead, there's immeasurable repetition of injustice, of death, dehumanization, and trauma. And this is allowed to continue on the backdrop and the face of the UN Committee on the Rights of Children and other such entities. Breaking the chains of colonization will require various paths on the matter of Palestinian children and their rights. Is there enough global pressure to ensure these effective changes? Riam?
Achieve justice. At the beginning, let me start by saying that there were also, as you well know, previous 6 Israeli aggressions on Gaza. And we, Palestine, went to the International Criminal Court even since 2009 and since 2014. And we had a lot to challenge, and we had to prepare several memorials and about the preliminary examination phase and the admissibility of the case until we reached finally a stage after several years to open the investigation. And the investigation is open, so the prosecutor can simply now issue arrest warrants. And it is surprising that till now the ICC prosecutor did not issue arrest warrants. The files and the information before the International Criminal Court is already there. And we really appreciate the role that many international lawyers and lawyers worldwide want to show solidarity and want to bring information also to the International Criminal Court. But I think it's very important, of course, to go to the International Criminal Court, but we can see the approach and unfortunately of how the International Criminal Court reacted towards other cases in the world and how it is reacting towards Palestine. And so I do really encourage lawyers to invest also in the principle of universal jurisdiction before national courts to activate the universal jurisdiction to prosecute Israeli individuals who facilitate or are direct involved in the commission of war crimes and crimes against humanity against the Palestinian people, whether it's in the West Bank, whether it's in Gaza, because Gaza is part of Palestine, or part of occupied Palestine. And since the 7th of October, we cannot forget what is happening in the West Bank, because in the West Bank now, since the 7th of October, more than 105 Palestinians have been killed. More than 2,000 Palestinians are hostages as well. They have been taken. And including more than 48 children have been killed in the West Bank. So the international litigation is important, but I do recommend all this effort to go also to national courts to activate, and all the people should call their governments to activate their judicial body, their courts, to activate the universal jurisdiction. What it means, the universal jurisdiction, that any Israeli official who is involved in war crimes and crimes against humanity can be prosecuted if if he or she enters the territory of that state. And the other thing that I want to mention,
yes,
that there are already various international resolutions in the UN about Palestine, but the problem is in the effective implementation. There is no effective implementation till now.
Absolutely.
So
I think that's always the hassle,
UN,
is the
as
lack
well
of
as,
intervention from the UN
should-
side.
the
Riyam, I'm
role
not
of
sure if you can hear me. I think a very
advised.
last quick comment on the trauma and the level of trauma that children in Gaza are feeling and seeing on a daily basis. Where's the intervention from the UN charters that protect the rights of children? Whether it's from UNICEF, UN, there are enough charters to protect children's rights. Why are we not seeing any of that in place? I just need a very brief answer, because I know we are leading to the end of the program. If Riyam is still online, or else if Dima, if you could perhaps take that, because you are part of the State of Palestine, the mission observers. We want, I think the question from Shaheen came in as to the amount of trauma that we're consistently seeing because of these atrocities. Is there any recourse? Who's protecting the children? Are any of these rights being enforced? I think we're just waiting for Riyam to unmute. While she does that, I think this, there are a number of topics that have been coming up, and I think there's so much we can say to each one of them. Each one lends a question on its own, a topic and a conversation on its own. I think the one thing we can all agree on is this is not something that has started in isolation. It is not something that has started in a vacuum. Riyam, you can come through? Can you hear me? Perfect. Riyam, if you can just unmute, we just wanted to know a very quick answer with regards to the trauma and that the children face on a regular basis. This was a question from Shaheen Taj in the UK. And in terms of how are the charters protecting the rights of the children?
Thank you. Excuse me, the last part, who will protect the right of children? I couldn't hear it. How what?
So the question has come in terms of the charters. I mean, we're seeing children going through consistent trauma because of the consistent oppression that they are facing. No problem. If we can't, I know that we will have to move on, unfortunately, because of timing. We will get this, and we will make an email address available at the end of this. But Shaheen, I think because of the work that you do in communities around you, you know the trauma that's consistently being faced. And I think if you ask me, people in Gaza are consistently living with post-traumatic stress disorder. Only theirs is not post-traumatic. It's consistent and it's current. We know that this did not happen in isolation. We know that this didn't happen in a vacuum. This is a consistent and a systematic dispossession, occupation and oppression of an entire nation of people. And it's not just something that you're seeing what is happening in Gaza. We are also seeing it happening in the diaspora, where identities are being stolen, whether it's in food, in clothing, in any aspect. And I think it's important for us to lend the voices, as Sophia also rightfully said, not just for the people outside, but also for the people inside, to ensure that there's representation, to ensure that these voices are being replicated the way it's meant to be replicated. And it's no longer a time to be afraid to ask the hard questions. We have voices. Let's exercise our integrity to be able to put that to the forefront. Lena, I know you've got a few closing comments to make, some key points as to where do we go forward from here? How do we end this? How do we take it forward to ensure that this pause doesn't make us lose momentum? How do we move forward to ensure our strength is valid on this?
We absolutely need to end the decade-long dispossession, occupation, and oppression of the Palestinian people by the state of Israel. The genocide of the Palestinians, of which more than 47% are children, is not a religious issue. It's a question of humanity. We have seen blatant double standards and biases that we're discussing here against the Palestinians and against those who stand up to the injustices. I urge all of you to act on behalf and for these 70% of women and children who are voiceless inside Palestine. I ask you to speak up others and support only businesses that do not harm Palestine by boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning those who use their capital for evil intentions, bad intentions. Thank you today for joining us. We look so forward to working with you in collaboration to free Palestine. We are here. The Palestine Lobby is available to help you. We have talking points. We'd love to work on projects together. We work with the Palestine Mission. We work with all Palestinian United Front, and we really want to thank you so much, Zahira. And I also really want to say thank you to the South African community who has consistently spoken out on our behalf, and we feel the love, and we know that you are there behind us, and we hope that we can follow in your amazing footsteps of abolishing apartheid and abolishing occupation and abolishing oppression in our country, Palestine, occupied Palestine, Israel, call it what you will. Thank you very much, and free Palestine.
Shukran. Thank you so much, Lina, for sharing those words. I think as a South African community, we only know very well the Palestinian cause, and our community, whether it's the Muslim community or the larger community, speaks very strongly against oppression. And this is something we will continue to do no matter where we see it, because that's a tenet of who we are. And I think the Palestinian cause is something very close to many hearts. Every single person watching here, as Lina's pointed out, phenomenal key points to continue. We do have an email address. Keep in touch. Get the information you require. Do not lose momentum. Do not see this as something in isolation or in a vacuum. This is something that needs to stop, so that every person, every woman, every child, every man in Palestine is no longer seen as a number. They are no longer dehumanized. They are seen as individuals like me and you. They have the rights like me and you. They're able to breathe. They're able to live. They're able to thrive, just like me and you. And like the first video we watched on the dreams of the Palestinian children, inshallah, may those dreams be realized. May those children live to be able to see those dreams, to be able to live those dreams. Let's help change the narrative. The power is within each of us. We thank each of you for joining us. I thank my panel, Dima, Riam, and Lina, for making the time to share your thoughts with us. As we have assured everyone, this will not be the last of the conversations. To the Hilaal team and the producers behind this, I thank you for making this possible and for providing a platform where we can speak about impactful, sustainable change and be part of that process. We will be ending off with a video. Please note that this has been recorded and will be available for all. We thank you for your commitment to help us in the cause. Shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Talking about how we were suffering, how we couldn't live in peace. But now, we can't live in peace either. We are suffering even more. Me, a 13-year-old child, talking and asking for water, talking and asking for food. How am I supposed to live a life? I'm a child like every other child. People tell me my tears are gold. But I cry and I don't see anything. What am I supposed to do? I'm asking for help. I'm asking the Arab countries. I'm asking the Islamic countries. None of them are helping us. You saw that child. What did he do? What did the children do? Is it their fault for crying? Is it their fault for asking for help? We're children, like every other child. I'm not asking for your help. I'm asking for you to share. I'm asking for you to at least feel pity for us. I don't want you to feel sorrow for us. We're not a piece of trash. We're humans. We have rights.